So, I said to you today that we're going to step out of our comfort zone and we're going to go places we have never gone before. And we're going to address some things that our long past due are addressing. And one of the things that we're going to address is the whole issue of how do we interact with young people, high school and college people. And we're very happy to see we have some young people here, right? Everybody keeps saying, oh, you can't get any here. Well, they're here, all right? And there's going to be more here. And Nan and I were in South Carolina for the South Carolina Tea Party Convention, and we ran into Charlie Kirk and kind of made quick friends and started emailing back and forth. And I just knew that he was a person that we had to have come speak with you because he's just such a special young man. Having, as a high school student, he started Turning Point USA as a high school student. And now he's grown it into high schools and colleges, and he has people in 50 states, college branches or high school branches, and they're growing. And he has just some very cool ideas on how we can reach out to young people with our conservative message. And I think that you're going to want to get together with them. You're going to want to support them. And together we're going to make a bigger impact. So welcome, Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. And you have a wonderful coordinator and leader here in Tom. I travel the country. Yeah, you should give a round of applause for him. I have the opportunity to travel the country, meet a lot of grassroots leaders and Tea Party folks, and you have one of the best in the country here. Energetic, very responsive, has a vision, actually wants to do something, which is really, really rare. So yes, we have representation in all 50 states. And we're growing extremely fast, representation on over 700 colleges and high schools nationwide, and I'll dive into that later into my speech. I would like to congratulate everyone here today. By attending here, you now have earned yourself an IRS audit, so congratulations. You can talk to Congressman Jordan about that if you have any problems or questions. I'm from Chicago, born and raised, so everything that's wrong in the country you can pretty much blame on our city. I was downtown the other day, and there was a guy circulating petitions to try to get term limits on our ballot. And I went up to him, I said, we already have term limits in Illinois. 1 term in office, 1 term in jail. I don't know, what are you doing here? So, born and raised in Chicago, publicly educated. When I was 18 years old, I started to debate more of my teachers on free markets and economics. I felt that the conservative message was widely underrepresented amongst my generation, but that doesn't mean that a lot of people in my generation shared our value system. I felt there wasn't an organization or a movement that was reaching out to us to be able to organize us in the way that the left was doing. So I started Turning Point USA on June 5th of 2012, right near the end of my high school career. And in 2.5 years, we've seen amazing growth nationally, and I'll detail that as we move forward. What's really interesting is I get to communicate with a lot of young people. I get to meet with a lot of college students and a lot of high school kids. And I can tell you that after voting for this president twice, there is a lot of, I like to say, they're reconsidering their decision in more ways than one. And it's up to us as a movement to be able to paint that alternative and be able to construct a vision for them to plug into. I'm going to tell you a couple stories, and I think you'll be able to get something out of it. So our organization, about 9 months ago, we decided we wanted to host a debate. And we said, well, what's the most liberal school on the East Coast that we could host a debate? So Brown University was booked, so we decided to host it at Columbia University. Who you're familiar with? I think our president has one of his many degrees there. So or something like that. So we had the debate, and I was representing the capitalist side. That capitalism is the best way to raise the standard of living for all people, and the other person was representing the socialist side. She was saying that we need 90% taxes on rich people and redistributive policies, all that happy nonsense. And, her main point was that, we have lots of poor people and we need to redistribute. And, I won the debate overwhelmingly. Which is most interesting, I think a lot of people in this room will be able to learn something from this, is that afterwards, kids came up to me, and I'll never forget this. One kid looked around and he said, who is that Adam Smith guy you kept on mentioning? Or who is that? You mentioned that Milton Friedman. Mind you, these are Ivy League students, the best and brightest that we have in our colleges and universities nationwide, kids that got 34, 35, 36s on their ACTs. These were leaders of their high school government, and they didn't even know Adam Smith from Milton Friedman to F.A. Hayek, the difference of this, and they were interested. And this one kid came up to me and he said, really, can capitalism help people? And I said, yeah, they can. I kid you not. There was a kid that came up to me and he said, you kept on talking about payroll taxes. I thought FICA was my employer. I said, no, that's not your employer. So that was interesting. So the real fun thing happened the next day. My friend Brett helped set up that debate, and he came up to me afterward. He said, hey, that debate was great. I know you have a couple extra days in the city. Do you want to sit in on a political science course tomorrow? I know you're kind of political, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's fine. Just don't say anything. I said, yeah, sure, that should go well. So I walk into the political science course the next day, and it's a regular freshman introduction to political science, about 300 kids in a lecture hall. I sit in the back of the room, and I'm just flipping through my phone. The professor walks in. He's got hair down to his knees, tie-dye shirt, double earrings, that little half-liberal goatee thing that they got going. You just turn on MSNBC, half the people have it there. It's exactly who we want educating our youth, right? Walks up, and he starts with the regular syllabus, and he's just walking through. Nothing too controversial for the first 15 minutes. And then about, 20 minutes into his spiel, he says, and those evil capitalists stealing our money. And about 7 rows in front of me, Brett turns around and he's like, don't say anything. So I had to make a decision. I could either stand for what I believe in or debate this professor. So I obviously stood up, without even thinking. And so mind you, a little more background before I dive in to tell you what happened. At the time, I was 19 years old. I still have yet to get my college degree. I'm going to get it soon, and I'm working towards it. I'm debating a doctored Ivy League professor in his 60s on economics who is published in national journals. Here I am at 19 years old, and the extent of my economic literacy is reading Wealth of Nations and Road to Serfdom. Fair fight, right? Of course. And I'll tell you, I believe that if not a tie, I won the debate. And again, I had students that came up to me afterwards. They said, Charlie, I was so interested in what you were saying. I really want to learn more about, free market capitalism. You mentioned how capitalism has eradicated poverty. Can you shed more light on that? And I was able to give them some of our publications and booklets that we wrote. And I encourage you to come by our table in the booth area. You'll be able to get some of them. And one of the kids came up to me and said, I always believed that, but I was afraid to challenge my professor, and I was never able to articulate that the same way you were. And so the professor comes up to me. He's like, do you go to school here? I'm like, I got to go. And so I share that story for more reasons than one, is that, a lot of the time, the Republican consultants and people in the world of electoral politics like to look at things in a finite box, that there's a certain amount of voters and a certain amount of people that think the way we do, and as long as we get them to show up, we're going to win. But I make a counter-argument that we have millions of young people that have never been messaged to, that have never heard what free market capitalism is, what does limited constitutional government mean for them, what does the government leaving them alone to live the liberties that they want to live, what does that mean? And so if we think that the movement has expanded as far as it can go, I tell you, we haven't even begun to fight. Because I've traveled this country, and I've gone on colleges in almost, I think, about 32 states, and I've been on campuses all across the country, and I have seen the infrastructure that the left has built on campus, not just on the institutional side, not just with the professors and the teachers. We know that they're far left-wingers. We know that. I'm talking more on the ground game that they have built. I'm talking about how Organizing for Action, Obama's political action arm, has 8 full-time field staffers at UNC Chapel Hill, just for that campus. I'm talking about here in Columbus, Ohio, at Ohio State University, and here's Tony who went there. Tony's great. Just for the 2012 election, they had 14 people that were hired to do nothing but Ohio State University, and the Republican Party had nothing. We didn't do anything. We had no ground game, no grassroots training. Yet, as a movement, if you look at the 2012 election, we spent hundreds of millions of dollars on television ads. Yet we did not invest in the ground game to be on the campuses to offer a concrete, real alternative for young people to plug into. Meanwhile, the left, not only did they do it leading up to the election, but I'll tell you what, on November 15th after the election, I got a call from my friend at Duke University. He said, Charlie, you're not going to believe it. They're still on campus. I said, but the election was last week. He said, yeah. they're still on campus. And I got calls in January. So what we do as a movement, the Republican Party is like, oh, there's an election, time to close all of our offices and, burn all of our signs and then delete all of our phone numbers. We'll never need these things again, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. The left, they've built a 24-hour, nonstop idea to be on campus. It is cyclical. It is something that is unending, and that's who they are. They are community organizers and campus organizers, and they're really, really good at it. And we as a movement have never done anything like that. So people say, Charlie, what are you trying to build? And I say, I'm trying to build the MoveOn.org of the right. And we're doing a wonderful job of it. We have 21 people on staff already in full college campuses with a projection to be able to counter-offense what the left has built on these campuses, because there is so much green space for us to be able to build there. The power of the youth is something that is not always talked about, in circles here. When President Obama lost to the debate against Mitt Romney, who remembers that the first night? It was great, wasn't it? It was awesome. It was one of the best nights, I think, I've felt in the last 2 years being in this fight. I felt for the first time that this president was finally put in his place, and we were going in the right direction. And I remember being on a flight, actually to Denver, going to CPAC, watching, on the little square TV, all these polls, like Mitt Romney has the momentum, Mitt Romney has independence, all this stuff. And if you go back and you study the history, how did Barack turn this, how did he save himself a month before the election, where Mitt Romney clearly had the momentum after the first debate? If you analyze what Barack Obama did and you read the memoirs afterwards, it will stun you. And this is a story that's not told a lot. Barack Obama left that debate stage, and it was actually his anniversary. I don't think Michelle wanted to talk to him, and he didn't want to talk to Michelle. Instead, he went straight to Valerie Jarrett, and he was pissed. And this is a documented encounter, and he pointed at Valerie Jarrett, and he said, "Get me on a college campus tomorrow." And she said, "Well, Mr. President, he said, "No." He said, "Get me on a college campus." She said, "All right, done." And he picked the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And that is what saved his campaign. On the front page of the New York Times, it said, "Obama recovers with record rally at Madison." 65,000 college students showed up for his speech the day after he got pummeled from Mitt Romney. You want to know where Barack Obama turned, where he had no one else to turn to? He turned to my generation. You want to know what saved Barack Obama's campaign at the time where he had nothing to turn to, where the unions didn't want to talk to him, where he was toxic? He turned to my generation. He went to campuses first, and that is what saved his campaign in 2012. And what he did is he promised the world and delivered nothing, and we believed it all. And, it's unfortunate because my generation has believed the temptation that big government liberalism can be the salvation for all of our problems. And we, as a movement, have a very unique opportunity, not just in this cycle, but moving forward to 15 and 16, to be able to message that the suffering that they are feeling is a direct result of their vote and their ill-fated, informed decision to vote for this guy that has targeted policies that will negatively affect my generation. That he passed a health care law with 27 new taxes, most of which are targeted towards young people. He passed a health care law that is truly a reverse Ponzi scheme to get money from young people to pay for older people. And they say it. They're like, well, as long as we get enough young people to sign up, we'll be fine. And my generation has been sold a bill of goods by a slew of politicians on both sides of the aisle, mostly the left, that as long as you continue to vote for us, we will give you everything. And we have a generation that the average student loan debt is $33,000 each. We cannot find jobs that are equal to the things that we're studying. Youth unemployment is catastrophically high. And even beyond that, we have Obamacare that's negatively affecting us. I tell you this, and I mean this truly, and I've been on the campuses on the ground. Young people are looking for that kind of alternative. They are looking for that answer, and they are looking for a way to plug in. And I can tell you exactly how not to do it, and then I can tell you how to do it. The problem that we have is we continue to talk to people that agree with us and look like us and think like us. These kind of functions serve a lot of purpose. But I think more than anything else, this kind of function should be about rallying people, but more than anything else, creating an action plan. Right? What are we going to do after this? Not just turn this into an Elks Club dinner meeting where we hear a lot of good speakers, eat some good food, and sign up for an email newsletter. What are we going to do after this? Right? So I can tell you exactly what you need to do. Everyone in this room needs to find 5 young people in your life, and I guarantee you have 5 young people in your life, where it's a niece, a nephew, a granddaughter, a kid, and challenge them about these principles. Ask them about how they're being affected. And if they're related to you, then engage them in those conversations. What we do too often is like, oh, we can't talk about politics at the dinner table. Well, I never believed in that. I'm sure that you didn't either. And, there's a battle in November, and that battle is not on Election Day. That battle is at Thanksgiving dinner where you're sitting with your relatives. Are you going to talk about, these policies and how they're affecting you and affecting these other young people? That's my first challenge. I'm going to tell you this, that we need to demand, and I'm putting this out there, demand that the Republican Party runs better candidates to message to young people. Thank you. I am so outspoken about this. I've made a lot of enemies, and I really don't care. I gave a speech a couple weeks ago, and I got emails from Republican consultants like, you can't say that. I don't care. And I said that Mitt Romney was the worst person we could have nominated to message to young people. Mind you, the field was really bad at the time. But we nominated a guy where he was asked in a magazine format where the readership was a majority millennials. So, Governor Romney, what are some of your favorite sports teams? Oh, I own a lot of sports teams. I am I know a lot about sports. Well, what are some of your favorite sports teams? The ones in Detroit. Yeah, These are some of the answers he gave to message to young people. When he was asked, do you follow NASCAR, he said, a lot of my friends own some teams. This is a guy that did not go on Comedy Central. He did not go on the NBC shows with Jay Leno or David Letterman. He did not know the difference between Twitter or Facebook. He didn't know the difference between LeBron James or Derek Jeter. And yet we nominated him, put on a national stage, and we demanded that he goes and communicates to a majority of the population that doesn't know the difference between Benghazi or ISIS. Right? If we want to message to the next generation, we have to understand what matters to them. And what matters to them is Breaking Bad and Netflix, not necessarily, Benghazi and ISIS. And that might sound weird, but in a presidential election, most people aren't like you. They aren't informed, and they aren't going out there in a way that is necessarily as educated as we would like. And we have to understand that, George W. Bush was able to win because he was able to connect with people and gain their trust. And I have a very, very simple test for the next presidential candidate that we are going to nominate. I agree with a gentleman that said that we need to think about nominating a woman because my generation is going to want to do the same thing they did in 2008. You know what they did in 2008? I want to vote to be part of history. I want to vote for the first black person. Okay, well, they're going to want to vote and be part of history and vote for the first woman. I'm going to let you know right now, that's what's going to happen. If we don't nominate a woman, we're going to suffer considerably because my generation wants to be part of a historic generation that can say, my vote was part of something, historic. So if we don't neutralize that, you're going to have a lot of problems. The other thing I'm going to say is this. 3 tests, 3 questions, very, very simple. And I ask these questions out of candidates all the time. I say, is Derek Jeter still playing baseball? What team is LeBron James playing for? And how many Hunger Games movies are there? And if you can't answer those 3 questions, you shouldn't be our nominee for President of the United States. It's that simple. And people laugh and they say, oh, that's ridiculous. I say, well, you're communicating with a generation that will not turn on Meet the Press. Instead, they're going to turn on Sunday NFL Countdown. You're communicating with a generation that cares more about who's going to win American Idol than whether we're going to bomb ISIS. We have people out there that are part of this, part of the American populace that votes that think Benghazi is a craft beer, that think that ISIS is a band, and that think that the NSA is some sort of acronym for some of a website. And I'm not kidding you. These are some of the things that I hear. And if we're not going to have a candidate that can articulate the mainstream American interests, then we're going to be losing continually. And also someone who can be able to reach out to the young people. So I'll close with this, and I want to open up for some questions. Every month, there are 1 million young people that turn 18. 1 million. It is the fastest growing demographic in the history of America, faster than the baby boomers. And if we are not going to make a concerted effort, and I mean time, energy, and resources to engage that next generation in a way the left has, this movement is done. And I'll tell you what, in 4 years, there will be another 40 million young people that will be eligible to vote. That's unbelievable. Think about that. 40 million young people that will be turning 18 in 4 years. By 16, there will have been another 36 million new voters than there were when Barack Obama last voted. Especially in states like Virginia, Ohio, North Carolina, and Florida, the millennial population is skyrocketing 16 and 17%. Well, those states matter for something, like, oh yeah, the Electoral College, right? If we're not going to message to them and we're not going to communicate in a way that is relevant and matters to them, we will continually lose, and we'll continually be scratching our heads saying, why is this? And I'll say one last thing. A majority of young people are liberal. I'm not going to kind of tell you anything different. It's just this. It's the way they think. It's the way they were raised, ways they were educated. But I'll give you one sense of optimism. We don't have to win over a majority of people, just a majority of those that vote. And conservative kids are 70% more likely to vote once they are engaged and plugged in. So you think about it. If you can neutralize and get 55 to 60% of the youth vote nationally, you will win every election. And if you can allow the Democrats, or if you can prevent the Democrats from breaking 60% of the youth vote, you will win every election. If they can get more than 60%, every single projection shows absolute catastrophic results for that. And that alone should be reason enough to engage young people and to get them empowered and plugged into the movement. A little more about our organization. We're in the midst of a 10-week program with the overarching theme. This is a little caustic, but I'll explain it in further detail, called Big Government Sucks. And it's on over 700 campuses nationwide. It's the fastest growing movement in the country. I talked to some young people about getting involved. Highly encourage you to come to our table in the booth area over there. We're selling some T-shirts that all the donations go to help our campus efforts. We have more booklets than we know what to do with and brochures. I encourage you to come out there and talk to me and talk to Tony and talk to Bill about all that we are doing. I think you'll really learn a lot. It's really exciting to meet grassroots folks like you that want to make a difference. There are more ways than one that you can get plugged in. If you're young and you want to make a difference, we have over 500 columnists for our website that publish weekly or daily, and they can publish as much as they want. We have chapter programs, we have ambassadorships, scholarships, you name it. We are growing very, very fast, and we have tons of ways that you can get involved. A young person voting for a Democrat is like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders. And if we are not, there's usually a lag time on that joke, so I'll give you like 5 seconds. If we are not going to tell them that if you're voting for big government, you're going to get harmed, then we're going to continue to lose them over and over and again. It's been a pleasure communicating with you, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
All right, Charlie's going to take some questions, so we'll start here with Greg Lawson.
I just have to ask, I think you hit a lot of things really wonderfully on the head, and I work at a free market think tank, so public policy and understanding the nuts and bolts of things is very important to me. I also understand that's not always very important to a lot of other folks. That not anybody in this room cares a great deal about that. So I think you hit some things on the head. How do you, though, it strikes me that the younger generation is, how do you peel back beneath the superficiality to some extent of those issues? I mean, I think it's cool to know who your favorite football team and stuff is, and I think that's very good for that connection, and maybe that's what it takes to get connected. But how do we get people to understand the $880 billion that we're projecting is going to be in just interest payments on debt in about 10 years, which is going to crowd out everything that anybody cares about, the student loan debt that is over credit card debt? How do you get these real tough issues to permeate inside folks who are more interested in, and look, I love craft beer a lot, but more interested in going and getting the best new beer, whether it's ISIS or some other anything else called. But how do we do that? Because I find it's very difficult to talk substance to a lot of folks and to really penetrate in there.
So I have a differing opinion about this than most people do. You win and you govern. I mean, that's that simple. You can't communicate Medicare to a kid. They don't know what it is. You talk about things that matter. 3 things, right? The government is listening to your phones and tapping every email conversation you have. You're being taxed to death. You can't find work. They just passed a health care act that's going to bankrupt you. Vote for me. I'll get rid of those things. Oh, okay. Big government sucks. You talk about Medicare and you try to do like slope curves of Social Security insolvency. I mean, the kid's going to be like, what? You're competing with the left that says 3 things. Health care for all, protect the women's right to choose, and the Republicans want to kill you, right? So, I mean, you have to be able to counter that. And if we go out there and say that, that's what they say. I mean, you laugh. That's literally, I've heard it. And so, I have a differing opinion. we should never, ever, ever talk about entitlement reform on a stump speech. Like, just stop it. We can do it once we're elected, and just govern it and pass it. It's things that need to happen. Talk about things that will get you elected. You know, I mean, that's that simple. Win.
Charlie, I couldn't believe it when I met you in the other room. You were going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is kids. Do you find that you have to work extra hard with our age group to get us to trust the younger people? They're not going to listen to us, I don't feel. So when you have these events and you're able to, do you do any sort of role playing to try to get us to remember what it was like when we had parents that we didn't trust? I think it would work, and if this program you've started, it's a wonderful attempt. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I want all of you to meet Bill Montgomery in the back afterwards. He's on our board. He's 74, a senior advisor. He's the youngest 74 you'll ever meet, and he's been wonderful to me. So, yes, people are not trusting of my generation, but because of people like him and advisors and people that have helped add accreditation to our organization, I was 18 years old trying to raise money to substantiate a national organization. I can understand why people were distrusting of me at the time. Not distrusting, but hesitant to trust. And still at 20 years old, people are like, well, why should we fork over, XYZ dollars for this? You're young. Not all people, but they still say that. And I say, with the left, they trust their young activists, and they do it wholeheartedly, right? And I think we should consider that, age is a state of mind, and that, people can do things extraordinarily at almost any age if they're empowered and supported properly. So,
okay, next question.
Charlie, I'm Mary Pritchard, homeschool mama and president of a school board. Have you thought about tapping into the homeschool community? Because you would have a lot of like-minded people that you could groom to support you.
I would love, it's an initiative we want to do. We need to talk. We need to talk.
Yeah.
I want to do it more. We've been taking the low-hanging fruit of just going to colleges, but I've been waiting for a good introduction, and just please talk to me.
Yeah, so. Talk to her, and Mark Stevenson is here too, who runs a website and has all the contacts, so we'll introduce you to him too.
I would love that.
Homeschoolers are definitely here. Yeah. You have a question? Yeah?
Well, I just wanted to ask, I understand that on college campuses, maybe here at Ohio State, that there were buses that were being taken. Okay, sorry. Buses that were being taken at Ohio State or other campuses maybe to get kids to vote. Obama did a lot of that. I understood. I don't know whether that's true or not. But are you familiar with that? And how can you combat that type of thing?
Right. So they do it. They bus people around. They organize. And the way to combat it is to invest in an infrastructure where we can at least neutralize that kind of grassroots action and activism. And I kid you not, they have about 700 people full-time on just campuses nationwide. Staff. I'm not talking about volunteers. They pay their organizers. And, we make fun a lot, and we should. Our president's a community organizer. Like, what is that? Well, I'll tell you what. Those are people that win elections. That's who they are. And we laugh at them because we're like, oh, community organizer, he doesn't know anything. Well, he knows a lot about winning elections. And that's what they do. They get people together, they organize them, and they win. And they do it on campuses. They do it in minority neighborhoods in the south side of Chicago and Milwaukee. They do it in areas where they believe they can make huge gains. They organize, they register, they mobilize, they identify, and they win. And what we're doing is we are doing the campus organizing. And I'm an unapologetic campus community organizer. And, we're really good at it. And we're doing it for conservatism. And I think that if we don't start that thought process like, hey, the left is controlling the entire country thanks to this, maybe we should invest in the ground game. It's not just about running better TV ads. So, yeah.
All right. Additional questions? Anybody back here have a question? Okay, Charlie. Oh, there's we got one here. Paul?
You mentioned that you have been on college campuses, but you've also gone to high schools. My question is, I can understand in a college setting, there's much more opportunities for you to personally engage with people. What kind of venue or what kind of method do you use to reach high school students?
High schools are tough. Usually it goes on an individual basis. Kids that just want to start a chapter or want to start a group, they're much more difficult to penetrate just because of the way high schools are structured. You just can't go onto a campus and set up a booth and start recruiting where we could at any college. They're more open about that. But we still have a great infrastructure on high schools. We have thousands of high school activists that we empower and we communicate on a regular basis. And it's very important that we get into the high schools because everyone knows this. High schools have become indoctrination factories. And I could talk about, that's a whole different speech I could talk about. But it's systematic and it's intentional to get these high school kids to stop thinking and start believing in big government and stop questioning and start following big government, right? And if we don't empower kids to be able to counter that, then at the high school level, then we're going to have a lot of difficulty. And we have a booklet that I would love to give everyone in this room, and we have tons at our table called How to Debate Your Teacher and Win. No one ever thought of writing a booklet like that before, and we need to start challenging our professors and challenging our teachers because that's an extremely important way to be able to combat the falsehoods and lies that are taught so commonly in public education. So,
honey, you're getting me so excited I can't stand it.
All right, somebody give her some ice water. Calm her down.
The philosophy in the classroom today is the philosophy of the generation of tomorrow, and I really want you to meet my daughter.
Are you you have a significant other? Are you on the market?
I take the fit.
All right. We got another question back here, and we got a couple more minutes. But no, I hope you are excited because this is so important. And I think Charlie and his organization have answers we've been looking for. And his booth, he's got stuff there for you to take back to your members, and that's how it's going to get done.
Ralph Kaufman. I'm a retired high school teacher. Charlie, and boy, what a great presentation. The idea of getting in high schools, I did hear a rumor maybe a year ago, whatever, that actually Bill Ayers had spoke to some high schools in Columbus. Boy, if there was any way in the world that you and people like you, young, could get in front of the high schools, if they're going to bring the one side in, typically it would be difficult for them to refuse allowing you and others to come in. And what a boon that would be as well. And so anyway, don't know if you're familiar with Bill Ayers and some of that's been going on. I mean in Columbus, speaking to schools as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we helped break a national news story where he was brought on as what they called a distinguished scholar at a local community college and got an honorarium of $50,000. It's funny how terrorists become scholars once they become liberals, isn't it? It's interesting. The Bill Ayers thing, that's a whole different train of thought, but everyone in this room should be really scared because a lot of Bill Ayers textbooks are used in the Common Core implementation. So you should know that. And we've done extensive research and study on that. And I've worked with Breitbart.com to break those stories. Love to talk about that. Nice segue. I will speak anywhere, anytime. We have a speakers bureau of young college kids all across the country. Find a venue that's big, full of students, young people. I'll talk to them. I'll say things they've probably never heard before. Not provocative, things like I talked about today. And I would love to do that because we need to get that alternative point of view expressed, and we need to be able to get in venues that the left has dominated in. And if they're able to bring a distinguished scholar that at one time was one of the most wanted terrorists and was part of a Weather Underground movement that was killing people, then I think they should allow 20-year-old college activists. So.
All right, we have another question here.
Hi. My daughter attends Ohio University, and she was there for the last election. And, of course, Obama came to her campus. But what concerned me is that they were able to shoot out emails to all these kids on campus. She wasn't for Obama, but she was getting them anyway. Are you going to be able to do the same thing? Are you going to be able to get into these kids' emails and send out the same stuff? Are you going to go tweeting? Or how would you be able to get to a larger mass of kids? Plus, they got free T-shirts, which got a lot of kids to vote also.
So, yeah, that's a great point.
Sad.
So the answer
and Romney made us pay for our own signs, right? They were given free T-shirts, and Romney wanted us to buy our own signs.
It's a great point. So the Republican apparatus doesn't believe in the ground game. They believe in running better TV ads, which is a bunch of garbage. So for the Ohio University, this is why community organizing matters so much. So I'm very familiar with that example and examples like that, not with that specific one. So, for example, they have these people on campus all the time. So what do they get to know the administration, they get to know the janitors, they get to know everyone. So when push comes to shove, And Barack Obama's coming on campus. They put their arm around the student activities. They say, hey, you know that how you have every access to every student email on campus? How about you send out a blast and let them know Barack's coming? And let them know we have free T-shirts. Oh, you bet. And we show up, and the Romney staffer has the white shirt and the jeans. He's like, hey, how about you do that? And they're like, who are you, right? Where were you the last 4 years? And we're not going to do that. Who are you? And they'll make all these excuses, and they'll just punt. But the infrastructure matters so much during that campaign cycle, that they build and they build and they build the relationships. And then, for example, at University of Wisconsin-Madison, they sent out 7 emails to every student on campus from the student activities. So if you're not familiar with how this works, they have every email, the student activities office, obviously in their database, and they're the ones that control the blast. And they just blasted, make sure you come out and see Obama today. Make sure you come out, like boom, 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 boom. Nothing for the other side, right? And you could say it's because of the liberal establishment, and it is, but if you don't even have an infrastructure to be able to combat that, I don't think we're at a point to complain, right? So.
Okay, additional questions? Hold on a second. Robert first, and I'll come to you next.
Always looking for an action plan. I know you talked about find the 5 youth to try to mentor in that part. But what other action plan would you suggest us to do?
Right.
Because sometimes we got to think outside ourselves and not always be with the same choir. But how can we support you or support a similar type program here in Ohio? Either individually or collectively.
Right. So a great thing that I'll say, and it's a two things, an action plan. The first of which is if you don't know what's going on in your school board meeting every week, then you're not really a full-fledged activist. School boards is where things are make or broken. I'm telling you. They pass things that are criminal, and it's just we have so many great activists nationally that don't want to show up. And there's a reason why they put them on midnight on Tuesday mornings, midnight in the middle of the week, and they don't want to show up, and they have in some side classroom that's impossible to find because they don't want people to show up to these things. My first thing is get involved in your school board, run for school, local office, and keep them accountable. The other thing that is very concrete, I really want everyone to do this, is please sign up for our email newsletter that we have at our booth. And the reason I say this is we send specific action alerts, state by state, and even region by region at times, of biases that might be happening on campuses, ways that you can challenge local high schools or authorities, specific things. You'd be amazed at the power of activism. And I'll give you a really good example quickly. We got word back in December of 2012 from a friend of mine at a high school in Long Island that they just installed a 15-foot Obama mural, a picture of his face. And it was awful. We broke the story on Breitbart, Daily Caller, Drudge, national news story. Greta was covering it, Hannity. But the next thing that happened is really cool. It's because, we started to have grassroots activists like yourself. I spoke out there a little bit, and I got their emails. I just started blasting them. I said, we need help getting this thing removed. Start making phone calls. Start writing letters. Start going outside of the school. And we generated a ton of activism. And within 4 days, they were pressured, and today that mural is now replaced with an Abraham Lincoln.
Here. Way to go, Charlie.
And that's a great grassroots example of something that 400 people had to make 2 phone calls each, and you can make a substantive difference, right? And then multiply that times the entire country. So I think that, if you are able to, sign up for our newsletter and want to get active, we can give you ways that are not just pertain to young people, but, all kind of activists and patriots.
Yeah, and when you sign up for his newsletter and you get them, you need to send them to your whole group. We have to become a network. We have to keep spreading the word. Have another question here.
Hi, I'm Peely I'm Peely McCloy, and I'm the head of my Young Conservatives Club at Marysville High School.
Give her a round of applause.
Thank you. So what I was saying is this year as a senior, when you're trying to get people to come to your group, what they say is oh, young conservatives, you are single-minded, you only look for religious bases and all these things. But when I come with a liberal group, everyone's well, they're so open-minded and they're open to everything except for anything that involves religion or any conservative view. So why is it that conservatives are held to a higher standard and we have to keep everything on top? We need to watch everything that we're doing. But liberals, if they mess up, they're oh, well, I'm liberal and I'm okay to mess up. So why is it that?
So a liberal is very tolerant of everything unless you disagree with them, right? They're tolerant until you disagree with them. The reason is multifaceted. They've been told that the word liberal, actually in its traditional meaning, the root liberal does mean free and open thinker, but liberals used to be people in the 1920s and 30s, people that believed in free markets and limited government. A classical liberal is not what a liberal is today. And I think that the words have been so skewed and so misinterpreted by our education system and the media and Hollywood and everything together that conservative is so polluted and conservative is so poisonous. That's why our organization is called Turning Point USA, and our three things are free markets, limited government, fiscal responsibility. I will never say the words Republican or conservative in front of somebody under the age of 21. And I just won't. And I know what that comes. I will say, do you believe in free markets? Absolutely. Do you believe in low taxes? Of course. Do you believe the government should leave you alone to live your life? Oh, yeah. Are you conservative? No, those are the intolerant people. Right? They believe in what we believe in, but they don't want to label themselves the way that we sometimes label them. And that kind of progression can happen later once they get plugged in. That's why we take the tact that we do, and that's why it's important we talk about ideas and not as much as that political paradigm. It's unfortunate at times because that word is so polluted by things that we just can't control at times. So good question then.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Got it.
Coming up. Oh, geez, they're popping up all over the place. All right, we only have about 3 more minutes, so we got to get them in there. Be sharp on your questions. Here you go.
Isn't Tom the best? Look at him.
Hi, I'm Kathy Newhart. How does your group compare with the college Republican group? They call me all the time, and I've given them some money, but I'm listening to you, and I just love what you have to say. So how do you compare with that group?
Sure. We work closely with a lot of college Republican chapters. We think that what they're trying to do is admirable. However, we take an activist perspective, not so much of a fraternity perspective. They are more minded on camaraderie and, what's the word I'm looking for? Having a good time. We are more minded on doing something, right? And a lot of our activists are college Republican members, and I think that they've done a lot of good to build certain groups on certain campuses. However, if they were doing their job, we wouldn't be in the problem we're in. They've been around for 50 years. They have raised cumulatively over $300 million amongst that time. They still raise a lot of money. And I wouldn't have started this organization if I thought they were doing the best job they could do. And that's why everyone in our organization has a specific label, and we call ourselves activists. And we do something on campus, and we want to make change, not just be part of a fraternity. So.
Okay, we have 2 more questions then. Next one.
Yeah, my name is Rick Burkholder. I'm a new school board member for Northridge in Lincoln County. And I want to enforce a comment you made that people ought to get involved in their school boards. I go against the status quo, and I get hammered a lot. And if there's somebody out there in the audience that I know that is for me, it helps me a lot, believe me. And it would help any conservative on a school board. So it's very important that people get involved with their school boards.
Extremely important, yes. Absolutely.
Great. Okay, last question, Mary Jane.
Hi. My thoughts are we need to skyrocket you into the GOP and the college Republicans who call me, and I have that same sense about, oh, this is never going to work. If you message yourself and your way of doing things and your 3 parts, and here's how you talk to them, and here's where you put your money, I don't know if that would deep six you if you were considered conservative, but they know they're not winning. So that to me is a big question. How do we get your folks on the college campuses or get you into GOP advocacy so they see you need to train those people and make this movement big? Not just, first I'm thinking, wow, how do we get them in all the swing states? Well, how do we get you at the front of the GOP reach out?
Good question. Respectfully, I don't necessarily want to be. I consider myself an independent. Sure. I mean, I've offered a lot of services. I work with a lot of their auxiliary groups. I'm sure since this is more of a grassroots group, the establishment is tough to work with at times. They have a different agenda. I'm sure you all love John Boehner, what he's doing, right? Sure. I'm saying that they have a way of doing things. They are set in their ways. They have a formulaic way of looking at things. We take a much more innovative approach. We take a much more quick, movable, pliable approach. Just a great example is I got a call from one of our donors. He said, I'm going to give you XYZ dollars. Can you register 5,000 new people in North Carolina before October 11th? I said, absolutely. Done. And it's already in progress. That's how quickly we're able to move. No bureaucracy, cut to the point. And I don't find that amongst the party apparatus that is always out there. Difficult to work with, and I know Tom could add more light to that. I want to great question. Please come by our booth. Come get my business card. Sign up to get involved. If you say nothing, that is just like complying with them. Fight, be active, and get young people involved in the process. Thank you so much.
Charlie Kirk, I told you.